This is the Final Round Podcast, coming to you live from the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Marquardt. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Final Round Drag Racing Podcast. This is Chris Marquardt. Going to have Jason Oldfield on the show with us here as soon as I can figure out how to run our overlay system. Jeez, this is giving us fits. There we go. Had to work into that one so that it was looking the way that it was supposed to. Thanks a lot for everybody that is tuning in to join us here tonight on Final Round number 5 here as we look ahead to the Christmas weekend. Everybody already beginning to enjoy some of the revelry with Christmas break and looking forward to the new year. We've got all sorts of plans to discuss tonight with some tentative schedules for next year. We've got the Super Rod Association banquet plans coming up next month, and also if you are tuning in on Finger Lakes 1, you might be catching up with some of that Clyde Savannah basketball game that Jim and the boys are doing up there in Savannah. Jason Oldfield waiting on the line. I know there's a ton of stuff that we want to hit on. And IHRA's got some news with their championship program that we're going to discuss. But the big news right now is that Empire has opened the doors so that January the 21st, which is going to be a Saturday night, you guys are going to be able to give away some of the Western New York Super Rod Association hardware for the season. Jason, how's your Christmas break begun so far?
Well, so far so good, Chris. It's good to hear from you. Merry Christmas.
Same to you, man.
Oh, thank you. So Christmas break. I guess it's one of the nice benefits of being a working slob is that I get to accrue vacation time, and I got a whole bunch of it. So I'm off until the mid first week of January, and I'm going to try and enjoy some time around the house and see if I can catch up on some of the stuff that, quite frankly, I've been putting off, like my poor race car that is sitting out there waiting for me to. I fogged the motor and stuff like that, but it's waiting for me to back the valves off. I should have done that probably a month and a half ago, but haven't done it, so I'll get that done the next couple of weeks. So it's like I said, sometimes it has its benefits to be a working slob.
Right. Now, you're still looking for a trailer, or did you find one?
No, I'm still in the market for a trailer. I guess I will call it hopefully next week. Hope to put a little bit of get some clarity, I guess, as far as where we are with the replacement with that. And my guess is that probably what's going to end up happening is sometime early spring. I'll probably end up ordering myself a new one. I guess is probably what's going to happen, but. I would say locally here we got a real good. We have a couple of real good trailer dealers here in the area. I mean, Dan Fletcher, who was on our last podcast, he actually sells trailers as well. So I got to talk to Dan, and JPR Trailer Sales, another one that's kind of in the area. I got to talk to those guys too, and hopefully I can find myself something in time for the spring.
You'll be fine. Open trailer it. Do it old school.
Open trailer it. I did that for a while, and when I got done with the open trailer, I told myself, I'm never, ever doing that again. I give a lot of credit to the guys that do the open trailer stuff because, quite frankly, those guys are definitely guys that want to be out at the racetrack. It's a lot of work to load all of that stuff in and out of your truck every single weekend just to go racing, and it stinks. You go out there, you put your car in the trailer, and it rains, and your car gets just destroyed, and it's not as much fun as it is with an enclosed trailer, and I guess I'm blessed to be able to afford an enclosed trailer. So, I shouldn't say that. I mean, right now, who knows? We got to see what happens with regards to insurance money and stuff like that. The insurance doesn't come through for me. My only option might be an enclosed trailer or an open trailer next year. I don't know. We'll see.
You maybe Santa will leave his whole sleigh and trailer right there at the house, and you'll be fine.
Well, that'd be nice. I'm not going to hold my breath, though. But yeah, certainly that'd be nice. But regardless, as far as West New York Super Rod Association stuff goes, we did confirm with Jerry Scatia, owner of Empire, that he's kind of opened the doors to us to be able to come and do our banquet in conjunction with the Empire banquet there on January 21st. So it's officially called the Genesee River Reception Center in Mount Morris, which I believe is the Country Inn and Suites in Mount Morris.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be nice. Basically, anybody that's interested in coming, you can go to. I know you can go to the Empire Dragway Racers Facebook page. You could probably do it right from Empire's website, I would assume, too. But you can buy tickets and reserve rooms and stuff like that. I don't know if anybody's going to need to reserve a room, but I guess if you plan on doing some heavy drinking, you better get yourself a room, or I don't know if Uber will be in place by then or not. But if nothing else, you do need to order your tickets by, I think it's January 14th.
Right.
So, typical banquet type of thing. We'll have dinner and, cocktail hour beforehand, and then we'll do our official awards banquet then. And hopefully here in the next hour, once we get complete, I can finalize with Jerry that we're going to have, I hope, announce that we're going to be out there and broadcasting live from the banquet if we can arrange it. But we'll see. I still got to get the okay from Jerry to do that, but I think we'll be able to do that too if we so choose.
Very cool. I'm looking forward to that. So, what kind of hardware are you guys looking to give out with that?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
What you guys are going to be recognizing your season champion for the Western New York Super Rod Association?
Yep, exactly. Harry Phelps. He was the season champ. I mean, Harry did a great job this past year. I forget. I think he may have lost first round once all season, if I remember correctly. But for the most part, he had gone rounds every single time. He closed out the season when it came down to the very last race, and he needed to make it a couple of rounds. He won the whole event. I mean, we did end up having some hard luck by a couple of people that particular event, but hey, you got to give it to Harry. I mean, last race of the season, he was standing in the winner's circle, and that's what he needed to do to be able to close out the championship, and he did it. So good for him.
Right.
On the downside to that, I could have come through for our buddy John Pelican if I could have secured the deal second round for him against Harry, but I blew it. Is what it comes down to. I choked, and Harry beat me, went on to the next round, and that unfortunately secured John's second place. So John had a great season. John's, I guess, downfall this past season is that I think he literally either won or lost first round. So he certainly had more wins than anybody else this year. I think he won 3 events.
Right.
But those races that he didn't win, he just didn't do very well. And I tried to come through for him in the last race of the season, but like I said, I just couldn't handle the pressure and choked. So he took home second place, and then this is his father-in-law, and so that's they're basically staying in the Allen family, if you will. So they did a great job. They're tough competitors, really hard to beat. Tommy's a seasoned veteran, and certainly, I'm sure, has had a lot of practices and strategy with regards to how best to race in the super class as an ET race. And he's obviously done a good job because John's had a lot of success.
You're talking about the events and the wins and everything that those guys had come by through the course of the year. What's the schedule looking like at this point for 2017? We're not too awful far from the start of the 2017, and then from there you're only looking at a matter of 4 months, 16 weeks before they get into racing.
Yeah, it's coming up on us quicker than we think, and there's a lot of work to be done every year trying to coordinate schedules and sponsorship and all the rest of that. Right now what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and do 4 weekends, let's call it one a month, tentatively June, July, August, September, and do both Saturday and Sunday races. So we do two races a weekend.
Right.
Again, I got to finalize with Jerry still. I think at the moment, last I kind of heard is that he was kind of tentatively debating racing on Empire's normal race day is Saturdays. So they typically do a test and tune on Friday nights, and then a normal race days on Saturdays. And last year he did a bunch of races on Sunday. I can't tell you how many, but he did a bunch. And I think tentatively for 2017, he's kind of leaning towards maybe doing one Sunday a month. And typically on Sundays they were racing 8th mile, which the guys generally like. Some of the guys like to race 8th mile, so we would do Saturday, Sunday races. Now all our races will still be quarter mile, which Jerry's really good about accommodating us. So we'll probably plan on doing that. Right now it looks like Memorial Day weekend looks like a great potential weekend for us. There is a kind of a big drag race every weekend, Memorial Day, down at Maple Grove near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Right.
But I have to say, we don't get a ton of guys that go down there and race That's an NHRA sanctioned Division I event. We don't get a ton of guys going down there to do that. So that, I think, could be a good weekend for us, being the holiday weekend and all. And then kind of tentatively, I'm looking at July 29th and 30th, and potentially August 26th and 27th. Those weekends, at least right now, don't have any conflicts with either of the sanctioning bodies. Other than the one race at Maple Grove, there's no other conflicts there. And that's one of the difficult things with the Gretsch coming up the schedule, is trying to figure out between IHRA and NHRA, all right, what are the races that guys are going to be going to and really want to travel to. And this year kind of throw a little bit of a curveball with IHRA's new points deal, which we can touch on. So I really want to try and stay away from some of the IHRA races to give our guys the opportunity that want to try and chase that national championship in IHRA the opportunity to do that. And now, this is all tentative at this point, right? Because we still have a bunch of local series that we have to compete against. There's the 470 series that we had Dan Germano and Pat Budd on and talked to them about the 470 series. So there's those guys that race out of Empire, and I'm sure there's going to be some dates that they might want to race as well. There's the TNT Hot Rod Series, Ted Barnes' series that races out at Empire as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's one or two weekends. Hey, we keeping you up there? I'm watching you on YouTube.
Yeah.
You tired? You tired, Chris?
We've been dragging, man. It's been a long week trying to make all these orders together with Reckless Abandon Apparel and with some of the graphic stuff, trying to make sure that everything gets where it's got to be. We've been running ragged probably the last week and a half, but we don't want to miss stuff. You know what I mean? It's people come to like sort of recognize, and I've got a lot of good feedback on the show on Final Round, and a lot of suggestions on where to go with it next year. And as we've talked before, there's a particular ground base that we need to set. We need to get everything sort of stabilized, as people are accustomed to finding on every other Thursday, and we got to make sure that Finger Lakes 1 is happy with how things are progressing, and it's better to crawl before you walk. It's better to walk before you run. I'm not going to go jumping out and trying to grab, huge names and stuff like that if they're coming on and they're just talking to the wall. Right now we're in the middle of basketball season for Finger Lakes 1, so we're going to be, on Thursday nights especially, we're going to be pitted up against head-to-head with other content, so the show's not necessarily going to be featured front page on FingerLakes1.tv. I want to get this thing to the point where people expect it, or they come to know it, and we've had a lot of good feedback where we're building in that trend. We've had messages from as far south as Texas, which is awesome. It's going to grow little by little, and we'll get to that point. I mean, I'm listening to the dates that you've got set aside for next year, and I'm a little excited because I know that at least two of the dates that you mentioned, we don't have derbies that weekend. So I would love the chance to go and do one of these things live, and especially being a 2-day weekend, I'm excited about that. It's we can set the stuff up, leave it up, and then tear it down. It's far enough out to where we can do some R&D and find out what our signal strengths are like so that we can make that work. Obviously, we got to get the racetracks on board, because every racetrack in the United States right now, in some way, shape, or form, thinks that they need more bodies in the seats, whether that's a reality or just a perception. Everybody wants to have more bodies, because more bodies turns into more money turns into more successful business, because we all know it. It's a hobby. It's something that everybody loves, regardless of the type of racing and or motorsport that we're talking about. But nonetheless, these racetracks still have to operate as a business. And businesses have to stay viable.
Yeah, I will say that's something that unfortunately drag racers don't necessarily understand. It's because of the fact that we kind of come from the hobbyist and club mentality. So if you go back 50 years ago, essentially when drag racing first came about, basically what you had is a whole bunch of car clubs that existed. And the car clubs existed solely for its members. So what these guys did is they organized races on a weekend, and the track, if you will, didn't have to make money because of the fact that it was just the members of the car club that were the ones that put on the races. And I don't know that Jerry and I have had this discussion, but the previous owner of Empire Dragway, Bob Metcalf, and I had certainly discussions with regards to this. And, I want the track to make money. I mean, they need to be able to make money, because at the end of the day, it's a for-profit business, and whoever the track track owner is, be it Bob Metcalf or Jerry Scatia or whoever, they are sinking a significant portion of their money into this facility. You think about it. Jerry Scatia has paid, I don't know what the exact dollar figure is, but he put up a whole bunch of money of his own personal money to buy this property. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, why did he do that? I mean, yeah, he did it because he loves drag racing, but at the same point in time, he could have just taken that money and put it in a savings account and earned 3% interest on it, and been nice and safe and walked away.
Right.
It's not to say that I want Jerry to become a millionaire off of the local drag racers, but I hope at the end of the day he can, not the end of the day, but I hope at the end of his tenure owning the track, he can look back and say, yeah, you know what? It was fun. I mean, not only did I have fun doing this, but it was a valuable experience for me to do from a financial standpoint. And yeah, I'm not a billionaire at this point in time, but I didn't go broke doing it either.
Right.
So yeah, and whatever we can do, and we hear this all the time. We hear a lot of people preach about it. Whatever we can do to kind of help the local tracks be successful is definitely appreciated by the local track owners. And if maybe it's introducing somebody to drag racing, or bringing people out to the track, or I've done a couple of corporate events out there every single year where I bring customers out, and those are all things that help the track become viable. And the last thing that I want is this track to go under, because now what do I do with regards to someplace to go race? Now I got to get in my car and I got to drive an hour plus to the local drag strip, right? So we definitely want to try and make these tracks successful if we can, and hopefully make a little bit of money. And I think if we can get them some exposure through the Final Ground podcast and potentially broadcasting live and doing some other things, I think it's definitely going to benefit everybody.
That's our goal. It's where we want to end up. I'm excited for it. I think it's one of the things that we've looked at the model, and we know the model works. We just got to make sure that we can implement it in this type of motorsport. We've had a lot of talks with the folks at Dirt Track Digest, one of the internet magazines that focuses on circle track racing, and they've got elements for late models, dirt modifieds, midgets, indoor racing, outdoor racing, asphalt racing, touring type modifieds, all this other types of motorsport across the board that has to turn left. And we've also talked to the folks at Race Chaser Online, and we've talked to the folks with Race Pro Weekly that are covering the same stuff. And that market is so inundated with media content, be it highlight reels, be it YouTube uploads, be it whatever, just press releases, as simple as press releases.
Right.
That it's hard to break into that market, and information is so easy, and the fan base is so fickle that a lot of the racetracks don't want to do anything live. They're more inclined to do pre-race and post-race coverage, where you talk to a couple of the headliners, which is kind of like what NASCAR does with their coverage. They have their opening show where they talk about what could happen. And then with the 31st lap, then we talk about what could happen. Then it's black until we get to the end, and then we make another show and we follow up with what did happen. So the only way to know what happened as it transpires is if you're there in the grandstands. We haven't had anybody that was willing to bite on that for obvious reasons. I mean, you're not going to make anything off of it per se if they're not paying for the ticket to get in the stands. Whereas with the Demolition Derby stuff, we've had folks that wanted to advertise on the show, wanted to build their show, and we took the event and turned it into a destination derby. You have to go see this. This is great to watch. It's great to see it. It's fun to know what happened and be able to get your buddies together in the garage and watch this as you hang a sheet up and turn on your projector and you have 15 buddies over and everybody cooks out and everything. Well, it's a fun night. But it's still not the same as being there. Your eyes aren't burning from the fumes. You don't smell the tires when they're going flat. You're not hearing the pop when the engines blow.
Yep.
You're not hearing smelling the transmissions as they're melting down inside the cockpit. It's just not the same. There's no smell-o-vision. You don't get that experience. And that's one of the things that worked, is we were able to help so many different times we've seen in motorsport where people want to see it first before they bring their car there, whether it's drag racing, whether it's whatever walk of motorsports. They want to see it first to see how the tech process goes, how the officiating process goes, and if the rule book is exactly what's being followed in terms of everything that's outlined. What is the actual interpretation of the rule book, so to say? Being able to go live has given us the opportunity for folks to shorten their time gap. They don't have to wait for next year. They can see it right now. So now they see it the first time, they can get a feel for it, and maybe they go in person as a spectator, or maybe they go build something and they bring some equipment and they go try. Like you said, if the facilities go under, that's counterproductive. That's not going to help anybody. But if you're able to help get them be viable, you're not going to have to get in the car and take the trailer that you don't have and take the car that you can't tow any place besides your open trailer to go race someplace else, which is further away, which is going to make you less likely to go. And in turn, you're going to have fewer racers in the pool. And when there's fewer racers in the pool, now the next track in line is going to suffer, because when the track closed, all the racers just plain gave up and quit running versus going to the next one down the line. And we've seen that a jillion times.
Yep. Yeah, one of the big, I won't say that all motorsports are not kind of a really a spectator sport, but, one of the things with drag racing that's definitely different, and, it's going to definitely be different at your local tracks, but drag racing is definitely a sport that you have to experience kind of in person. I have a Japanese exchange student that's living with us through the end of the school year. And, I can show her the professional drag racing on TV, but there is nothing like actually sitting in the stands and watching a pair of Top Fuel cars go down the track when you've never experienced that before. And, I've kind of already made tentative plans that, this is something that she never, I'm sure, would have the opportunity to experience in Japan. It's like, what kind of drag racing person would I be if I didn't take her to an IHRA national event and let her smell the nitro fumes and hear the ridiculous thunder, essentially, that's created by a pair of fuel cars and feel the vibrations, the ridiculous literal ground-shaking vibrations of a couple of fuel cars. I mean, that's something that you can only experience by being at the track, and, TV just doesn't do it justice. Then on top of that, from a professional standpoint, if you were to go to an NHRA national event, you can actually walk through the pits and, go and, meet your drivers firsthand and basically sit right outside their haulers. And, you can't do that really at any other motorsport. Right. Locally it's a little bit different, but it's still a big deal in that locally, if someone comes out to the drag races, they can walk through the pits. I don't even know, honestly, if Empire does grandstand passes versus pit passes anymore. I think they're all pit passes at this point. You can walk through the pits, and if you don't know somebody, if you don't know a driver, you can literally just walk right up to their trailer, say hello, and strike up a conversation with one of the local competitors. And, how cool is that? If you don't know anything about it, to be able to, as long as you're extroverted enough to strike up that conversation with somebody and start asking some questions, guys are more than willing to sit there and talk to you and kind of educate you and tell you kind of everything that's going on with the races. And, one of the things that I'm hoping with the Final Round podcast that we can do is, make people, not only become interested to potentially go out to the track, but also help educate them as well as far as what exactly is going on. We're going to have a whole bunch of viewers, people that are interested in watching the show because they have their friends or family competing. But I would love to have those people that have a kind of passing interest in drag racing also watching the broadcast and kind of walk away and say, hey, yeah, you know what? Those guys kind of explained it to me, and I kind of get it now, and I'm going to go give it a try. I'm going to take my streetcar out there and go give it a try. It's one of the biggest problems that we have in this sport is that we don't have a lot of new blood essentially coming in, especially when you talk about the level that we operate at, and let's call it the super rod, hot rod, quick rod classes and above. Most of the people that are competing in those classes are old geezers like myself. We really need to get more young people involved in this sport. And, if you don't know anything about it, you're not going to get involved with it. And, you got to not only be educated about it, but then also have an interest and a passion about it as well. And, I've heard stories, from multiple people, quite frankly, that are people that had no ties to racing whatsoever and happened to hook up with somebody that was in the sport of racing, whether it be drag racing or circle track racing or derby racing, whatever it is, and walked away and then had a long hobbyist career in racing because they got got hooked, right? They went to the track, and this person kind of got them hooked on it, and next thing you know, 30 years later, they've been competing themselves. So, hopefully we can grab a couple of those young people and, like I said, get them interested in the sport as well by potentially doing some events out from Empire next year.
Yeah, I was surprised at the amount of crossover audience we had just getting started with this and putting some feelers out with some folks who might know or might be interested in right off the bat. We had Jordan Rutherford out in Ohio, who's a guy that I met through RC cars and the Derby side of things. And sure enough, he's already posting pictures, getting ready for next year. And we're going to be seeing him here in, it's only, I can't believe it's only about 9 days away now at the New Year's Eve party up here in Waterloo at the Holiday Inn. We're going to have a bunch of those guys there, so we're going to be talking about some drag racing there, even though it's not exactly that type of party. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation. We talked a little bit about the dates coming up again, just to reiterate, those 4 events we're looking specifically at Empire Dragway. Have you had any conversations about going elsewhere and getting into some of the other tracks that are in the area, or is everything just at this point focusing on Empire?
Well, I will say that we are considering it at this point in time. I mean, there's a few tracks that are kind of on the potential list, if you will, of trying to potentially do some races. I would love to do a race or let's call it a weekend, if you will, either at New Media, which is kind of down, it's Pennsylvania, kind of north central Pennsylvania.
Sure.
It's 3 hours from here, I guess I would call it, from the Rochester area.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing, that particular track, it's an NHRA track, but that particular track is a little bit closer to the guys that all race out the East Coast. So you talk about Maple Grove and Englishtown and Atco, Cecil County. So there's a Mid-Atlantic Supergas Association down there run by Robert Keister. And I would love to do an event kind of in conjunction with those guys and try to post some pretty decent money and get some of those guys down on the East Coast to travel up here a little bit and get a little bit bigger race. So that's one of the tracks that we'd like to do something with. The other tracks that we're kind of tossing around, and one might be pie in the sky, is Dragway 42, which is IHRA's newest track. The track's been under construction for multiple years at this point in time. The short story is that when Norwalk left IHRA and went to NHRA after Bill Bader kind of left IHRA, then they started building this Dragway 42, or redoing Dragway 42, and it was going to be their super track Norwalk replacement. Well, it's been, 3 years maybe that this track has been under reconstruction. It's officially on the schedule now for the end of the year, so it looks like that this track is going to be done this year. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to do a race there. Like I said, that might be pie in the sky, but if not Dragway 42, I mean, there's Thompson, that's kind of on the west or eastern edge of Ohio, so that's another track that, again, has been open to doing these types of traveling circuses, if you will. Right. And I'd love to do, try and get a race out on that eastern edge of Ohio, because it's not too far for us. You're talking about from Rochester area, a 4-hour drive for us, but we get a bunch of guys that come out of Canada and out of the Buffalo area, so it's an even shorter drive for those guys. Mm-hmm. And now we can start picking up some guys out of central and eastern Ohio as well. And there's a whole bunch of super gas and super rod racers that are out there. And so we're kind of looking, we're talking to those guys and looking to see if we could potentially put together a weekend out there as well.
Nice.
So we'll see. It's all kind of tentative, and there's a lot of things that are fluid and in motion at this point in time. But I'm really hoping that we could pull that off. We tried, not in 2016, but 2014 and 15. We did races up at the Toronto Motorsports Park, mm-hmm. But we just didn't get the support there. And it's no fault of the track. I think really it's just a matter of the competitors. I think we have a bunch of people that just don't have passports, so they couldn't go across the border. Didn't want to have to deal with the bridges and customs and all the rest of that. But I guess maybe I'm hard-headed. I don't know. I'm always willing to try something more than once, in my opinion, just from a scientific, statistical standpoint. If you do something once and fail, it doesn't necessarily mean that it won't work. You got to try it more than once to prove that out and say that, you know what, we've tried this 3 or 4 times and it doesn't work. So I haven't given up on the traveling aspect of this just yet. And I think if we can make the money right and make the schedule right, I think we can get some people to come out and support us.
You talked about IHRA and NHRA and the bouncing back and forth. IHRA, they've got that new championship program in place that you're trying to give some space for. You know, that's one of the nightmares of trying to put a schedule together, because inevitably you're going to step on somebody's toes. It just depends on how big those toes are when you do end up stepping on them. Trying to give IHRA some space so that our guys up here have the opportunity to chase that. How much is this really going to change things in terms of what people have to do now to claim one of the IHRA crowns?
Well, what they changed is and NHRA still has this division idea where they've broken the country up into multiple divisions, and you belong to a division, and then you claim races from not only your division but from a national score. If you take races from within your division, you actually get bonus points. So IHRA kind of did away with all that. And quite frankly, I mean, I'm not going to say that it's a bad thing, but I think they got rid of the whole division idea strictly because of the fact that they had a whole bunch of tracks that jumped ship from IHRA to NHRA. Two of their bigger tracks, Bradenton and Edmonton, where they had some really big events, went over to NHRA. So I think IHRA basically said, hey, you know what? We don't really have enough tracks at this point in time, probably to really break things down into 7 or 8 divisions or whatever it was that they had. And we're just going to have, I think it's 30 events total. So it ends up being 15 double weekends. So every weekend's going to be a double weekend. So there's 15 double weekends, 30 races total. And if you're in one of the sportsman categories, top sportsman, top dragster, super stock, stocks, hot rod, super rod, or quick rod, you basically claim your best 7 of 10 races, and wherever those might be, if they're down south, up northeast, it doesn't make a difference. And I think because of that, I think you're going to get more guys that decide to, hey, you know what, I'm going to go give this a try. You know, in this particular area, this has been a really heavy IHRA area. So I think you're going to get guys that probably end up going to, I think Martin, Michigan might have been the first race on the schedule that guys from around here generally go to. That's about 7 hours away. There's also Budds Creek, that's about 7 hours away too. So you might get those guys, but that's in early May, so that's kind of tough for around here, because if you decide to go to a race in early May, it's very likely you won't have any passes on your car beforehand.
Right.
But there's Budds Creek, there's US 131 at Martin, and I think you're going to have guys that go to those races. They're going to come back then, probably go to Pittsburgh, which I think, if I remember correctly, is sometime in mid-June or early July. And then you have the Empire race, which is near let's call it mid-August. At that point, you'll have 8 races under your belt, and you'll have a real good idea as to whether or not if you did good enough to be able to make a charge for the overall championship and the final race of the season. And I think I'm going to say it's the last week of September, is a double race at Dragway 42, which is only 4 hours away from here. So I think you're going to get a whole bunch of guys that have done fairly well and said, hey, you know what? I think it's 15. If I remember correctly, it's $15,000 to win, to be champ, $5,000 for second, and $3,000 for third.
Yeah, it's pretty good money.
So I think there's going to be a whole bunch of guys that are still in contention for that $3,000 third place money. They're going to say, yeah, for a 4-hour tow, I'm going to drive out to Dragway 42 and give it a shot. So I think we need to stay away from that particular race, and I think we need to try and stay away from the other races that we can expect a whole bunch of guys from around here to go to, like the Martin, Michigan race and the Pittsburgh race.
Run one of your events in conjunction with it.
Run in conjunction with it?
Yeah, just get on the ticket. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Co-sanction.
I will say that the DNC Hot Rod Series has run a race out at Empire in conjunction with their race the last couple of years. I don't know if they'll do that again this year. The thing that scares me, I guess, from the conservative engineer standpoint, is the fact that if the weather is bad that weekend, your race is the first one that's going to get canceled.
That's for sure.
I don't know. Maybe it's the no risk, no reward type of thing. I don't know. But and I will say the TNT race last year out of Empire, they had, how many cars do we have? 65 cars, I think. So we had a lot of cars out at that race. Yeah, there was a risk there too. If it had been a rainy weekend, then the TNT series would have walked away from that race and said, geez, now we got to try and find a makeup tape because we got bumps for the important IHRA races. But at the end of the day, the weather was good, and they had a fantastic event out there. So I don't know, maybe I need to get somebody that's a little bit more of a risk taker to help run the series.
If it doesn't work, you still have all of October and a good portion of November to make it up. You'll be fine. It's nothing. It's fine.
Yeah, that's why I have to say that especially around here, in Northeast Western New York, you get to early October and it really becomes a crapshoot as to whether or not you're going to have decent weather. And I don't mind racing in October, just being a competitor, but I don't like being a promoter, I guess, during that point in time because of the fact that I'm biting my nails constantly, wondering if the weather's going to hold out for me or not. But yeah, you're running. That's why we generally try not to run before, let's call it Memorial Day as well, just because you get to Memorial Day, the weather's generally pretty good. So from Memorial Day to Labor Day, you can pretty much always, rely upon. Yeah, chances are we're going to be okay. You might have the thunderstorm that comes rolling through, but chances are we're going to be okay. But yeah, that early May and late October races, yikes! It could be 70 degrees and sunny, and it could be 30 degrees and snow, and you just don't know.
It's going to be 7 degrees and sunny if there's no race scheduled that weekend. It's going to be 30 and snowy if you do have one.
That is, I think that's true. It's
my experience.
This past year, we had a race initially scheduled for the first week of October. We ended up moving that up to finish our schedule out like the third week of September. And as it was, the first and second week, I think it was, of October was just really cruddy weather. But then it was the end of October. The weather was really nice.
Right.
Like I said, if we would have scheduled a race for that weekend, the weather would have been crappy. But so we'll see. But yeah, I also like to have a little bit of time if I can to. I don't want to schedule anything that far out just because of the fact that I like to have a little bit of time to fall back on. I don't ever really want to, if I can help it, crown a champion on a partial schedule. I really want to try and get all the races in if we can help it.
Right. You got to be more of a risk taker, I guess. You seem like you're such a planner. Just be cavalier with it. It's fine.
Yeah, we'll have to get somebody else in here to, I guess, push my comfort zone a little bit. But we'll see. I think, like I said, I think with the new IHRA series, the way that they've kind of structured this year, I think we're going to have a bunch of people that decide to change some of these races. So we're just going to try and stay away from some of that if we can. But at the same point in time, we generally like to, and if we can, have tune-up races, maybe the weekend before a particular race. So if we were to doing something in conjunction with Dragway 42, I would certainly be open to trying to race there the week before the big race at Dragway 42 because it gives everybody an opportunity to go there and do some testing before the big, the quote-unquote big IHRA race.
Sure.
So we'll see. That said, I don't know. Maybe the other thing that IHRA announced this year that is a little bit disappointing is the increase in the membership fee. It's not a significant cost, and at the end of the day, when you're racing and running a race car, it's really insignificant. But I guess it's more the principle than anything that they increased the cost by 20% for the IHRA membership fee, and it's like, well, what are we really getting for that? For the most part, we're not really getting anything. They got rid of the drag review, the printed drag review magazine, and so it's a digital online publication only, which for me is fine because I don't really read it at all, but that's a cost-cutting measure for them. Then on top of that, it's like, they talk about a whole bunch of other benefits that they give the sportsman racer, but these are all benefits that we've had in the past. And really the only thing they've quote-unquote added is live streaming from a, quote, national broadcast partner. But, in years past, they've always had Motor Mania TV broadcasting from their races anyways, so I'm not really sure what this live broadcast is really going to be. I doubt it's going to be live on NBC on Saturday afternoon. So my guess is the live broadcast partner is just going to be, Motor Mania doing it. So you might have some guys, and my wife questioned me right off the bat because last year the only IHRA races that I did was the points race out at Empire. And when I mentioned this to my wife, she's like, "What? You paid that just to go to one race?" And it's like, well, yeah, I did. And again, it's really not that much money in the grand scheme of things, but this might just be enough to push people and say, hey, you know what? For the extra money, I'm not going to race IHRA now. Forget it. I'm just going to stay locally and just do my normal bracket racing where I don't have to pay the IHRA fee to race. We'll see. It'd be interesting. I mean, I also heard today someplace, I was surprised to see this, but somebody was kind of rumoring that Mike Dunn, who's the president of IHRA, might be done with IHRA. Mm-hmm. So I don't know where this came from, but, Mike Dunn has only been president of IHRA now for, I don't know if it's been a full year, but that would be a pretty big, and quite frankly, he hasn't really done a heck of a lot as IHRA president in the year that he's been on board. But it would still be pretty big news if after a year and not really doing a heck of a lot, if he's stepping aside and going someplace else or being pushed out or whatever the issue is. I don't know.
Right. Programming maintenance, just following up. Next week, Finger Lakes 1 on Thursday. Our content is going to be off. It's going to be an off week for final round, 31st lap, taking the week off. I believe that is, we got some family plans that night in lieu of all the Christmas festivities, and then also we'll be finalizing some more of the plans for our New Year's Eve event. So final round is going to be back on the 5th of January. I talked to some of the folks over at South Butler Drag Strip. They're going to be having some of their planning meetings scheduled on Sunday, the 8th of January, just after the first of the year. And they're proposing an appearance on Final Round coming up potentially in the weeks following that. So the next time we're on after the 5th, it will be the 19th and then the 21st of January, barring anything unforeseen. It sounds like we're going to be part of that event out there. The WNYSRA Banquet and Empire Dragways Banquet on the 21st, and then that's going to round out the month for Final Round coming up in January. I can't believe how fast this year has gone as a whole, and just in the short amount of time, we've only had 5 episodes of this. We've already been out in the field once, met a bunch of drivers, and had a lot of support so far. I'm kind of liking the speed that this has been somewhat embraced anyway. And hopefully we can continue to expand that. The goal is once we get a little bit closer to race season, when we've got more action and more activities, we'll be able to get some more of the winning drivers on and plan things out a little bit more efficiently. At this point, we're trying to highlight drivers, and this is a tough time of year to pin drivers down. We had somebody that was lined up tonight, ended up on a flight trying to get back home, so that ended up falling through. But thankfully, we had the schedule stuff that we could hit on and IHRA's plans. It seems like that happens more often than not on that topic with IHRA, where you've got an increase for whatever reason, just if operating costs have changed or whatever it is, but you just see more and more of that conversation. What am I getting for this? What is this actually doing? Because I still have to pay entry fees. I still have to go to the door. It doesn't matter if I have my license or not because I'm still having to pay entry fees. It's just a little bit cheaper. At the end of the year, does the cost of the license balance out to exactly what you saved on having the license, as if you compare to what you were paying full price at the door? It's a constant challenge about that whole licensing thing. I know when I was working at one of the racetracks in my history, at that one point we had just done away with pit membership and pit licensing and all of it, and it was just one price, and that was that. There wasn't any guesswork. It was just you came to the window, whether you raced here one time or whether you raced here 30 times. It was going to cost you this much to get into the pits, and that was that as a competitor. Your entry fees were what your entry fees were. All the guesswork.
And that's one of the reasons why I guess I'll say that I think a lot of these local series have been very successful is because of the fact that we don't have a lot of this overhead, and we, the Western Super Rod Association, let's call it, when we race at Empire Dragway, we are racing under the IHRA banner, if you will, but it's the track that is really assuming, let's call it, the risk and responsibility of insurance and those types of things. And the sanctioning bodies can't get away with that because they're just too big. So they have to absorb all of those costs. Now, on top of it, they're also trying to do marketing and have writers for newspapers and photographers, and obviously they have to have tech people, so it becomes very, very difficult to police all of that and maintain all of that, just on people's entry fees. But I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at what the entry fee is going to be, I think IHRA posted that for this upcoming season in 2017, that it's going to be $150 to enter. And typically, what they will pay, and so guys will look and say, well, geez, for half the entry, I can race for the same amount of money. And with us, we have a sliding scale. So if we had more cars, you could actually race for more money if you wanted to. And not to mention the fact that we always had a side bet, our Calcutta, where if you wanted to put an extra $25 in the pot, then you could race for more money as well. So it puts a little flexibility with the racers as far as, well, if you want to race for more money, you can, and if you don't want to, you want to go on the cheap this weekend, well, go ahead and do that too. But that's something that the big sanctioning bodies can't do, and again, that's why I think a lot of these local series have been very, very successful. Just because of the fact that we can eliminate a lot of the overhead and pay really, really well for a pretty good entry fee. Sure. Now, my concern is that just thinking about this, let's call it from the 10,000 or 30,000 foot view, is that will us local series potentially put the big sanctioning bodies out of business? It's possible. I don't think it would happen with the NHRA just because of the fact that their pro show is so big, and really that's what drives people to go to the NHRA events. But IHRA is really focused on the sportsman racers at this point in time. And I don't know, maybe it is because of a lot of us, our little series, that we're hurting these bigger series because people are not going and not traveling to the races. 10 years ago, this all started basically because gas prices went through the roof and people couldn't afford to travel anymore. But, gas prices are pretty reasonable at this point, but people aren't going back to these larger races in general. You got a question as far as, all right, well, why is that? And I think a big part of it is the fact that guys have other places to race. Why should I go to IHRA race and travel 6 hours to go race for $1,000 when I can drive a half an hour to Empire and go race for $1,000 there with the Western Super Rod Association or the TNT series or the 470 series? I don't know.
Well, it'll play out how it plays out. I mean, it's crazy to think that it would topple one of the national series just because the groundswell, the grassroots movement was almost doing a better job in terms of payouts and return to the drivers and making the sport affordable. But at the same time, I can completely see where that model works because the independent guys, they basically all you have to do is model what the rule book is. Now that the rule book's out there, anybody can take that and amend it however they see fit to fit their particular needs and wants and driver base. I can see where it could lead to that. It'd be interesting. It's going to be an interesting year to see how that all plays out and how this works for IHRA as we work through 2017.
Yeah, it definitely will be. I don't know what they ended up paying for championship money last year, but I have to say, like I said, paying $15,000 to each of the sportsman champions. I mean, that's some pretty significant money to the point where, from my standpoint, I look at that and say, what I should do is I should go to 3 of these events and again kind of see where I stand after 3 events. And if I'm in the chase, great. I'll go to a couple more. But after 3 events, if I'm sucking it up, then all right, forget it. I'll just I'll let it go until 2018. But it's kind of hard to pass up on a $15,000 championship like that, and that's a significant amount of money. And and if you can do your best 7 of 10 races from around here, if you went to Martin. Again, that's a 7-hour tow. You got Pittsburgh, that's 4 Empires in our backyard. You do those 3, that's not going to be a significant amount of money that you're going to have to outlay to go to those 3 events. And then, you could look at Dragway 42, which is 4 hours away, and then you probably have to pick something else. You probably have to pick North Carolina or something like that. But like I said, you only do that if it looks like you're going to win. Right. So for a fairly insignificant amount of money, all things being equal, right? I mean, we are talking about something that's still very expensive. racing cars is not inexpensive, but trying to keep the cost down here for a fairly insignificant amount of money, you can kind of put your hat in the ring with regards to, all right, maybe I could be a national champ. And it's worked out. Doug Linden, last year he was the IHRA Division I Super Rod champion this year. Last year he was the IHRA National Super Rod champion. So, I mean, this year we had, and I still have to get Pete Dagnolo on the show here. So Pete is the IHRA Super Stock World Champion this year. Mm-hmm. So it can definitely happen for guys around here. There's lots of good competitors, and there's no reason to think that if you compete locally here that you couldn't potentially go and compete on a, let's call it, national level too. So right. It's very possible. And like I said, $15,000 is a lot of money to us little sportsman racers from around here. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening.
I could find plenty to do with $15,000.
Well, I know the first thing I would do is go buy a trailer. So it'd be nice to win the $15,000 to pay for the trailer. But right. I guess we'll see what happens. The other thing too is that another big race that kind of expanded to this year is the fling events. We'll call them the fling events. It's the spring fling and the fall fling that Peter Biondo and Kyle Seifel put on. They've expanded from 2 races to 3 races. And again, it's kind of one of these big dollar bracket races that gives the guys an alternative to go race at rather than race with the big sanctioning bodies. But it's a pretty big deal that, they got, I think, a race at Vegas, a race down in Florida, if I believe, and a race at Bristol. And, those races are $20,000 and $30,000 to win. You could certainly see where they've now expanded from 2 to 3. How long is it going to be before they have a 6-race series? Maybe one a month. Just again, give other good guys more than another avenue to go race their cars and go race for some decent money.
Right.
I have to say, you got to be a gambler to go race those races. That's really, really tough racing. I mean, you're talking about really now that kind of money you're going to pull for one race. You're going to pull the best of the best from all over the region to come out a race at a race like that. So I really equate it to the World Series of poker. You got to be willing to put up some decent money and go play against the best of the best. But if you do, you can. There's a pretty nice payday for you too.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with those guys too. I would say Kyle and Peter are great people, and really good racers too. And one thing I do like about the two of them is that even though they're both great racers, they don't compete at their own events, which is it speaks large to their character, in my opinion, because you would have guys that would do that, and you just can't. There's a conflict of interest, and you just really can't do that. And they put on a great event. They have a lot of great awards. They get a lot of sponsors involved, so not only do they have the good purse for everybody, but they have a lot of nice side awards, too. So if you're, let's call it the best package, you have the best losing package, they usually have some type of prize for you, if that's the case. And, they'll have all different types of races going on, and so they do a great job, give a lot back to the sports and racers, too. So it's a great series. I would definitely recommend if there's bracket racers around that haven't competed with those guys, that they take a look at the fling races, because they're good events.
Lots to do, lots to think about coming up for 2017, Jason. I mean, we've been at this for almost an hour now. I appreciate you coming on and talking about it. Are we going to see you January 5th? You said you're off up until about the middle of that first week. We going to see you in studio next time?
Oh yeah. I'll definitely be coming out January 5th. I hate to announce, because I already had a guy lined up for tonight. Like I said, who got stuck essentially flying back from Florida and got caught up. But Dan Delaney, better known as Dan the Sign Man, has committed to coming out to studio with me on January 5th. Dan's a great guy. He is a fantastic sign painter, car letterer, and just designed some really fantastic paint schemes, done a lot of really high-profile cars, won multiple NHRA Best Appearing Awards for his work, and he's already committed to coming on the show on the 5th. So
I like it.
he's out in the Buffalo area. He's going to drive out to Rochester, and then we'll ride out. The plan is right now we're going to ride out on the 5th, and we'll be in studio on the 5th. And it'll be more of a nostalgia show, I guess. I mean, we can certainly talk about some of the upcoming stuff that he may be working on and stuff we're going on, but kind of the interesting stuff to talk about with Dan is going to be kind of some of the past projects he's worked for and some of the famous people that he knows, because he knows pretty much everybody. He really is a legend when it comes to lettering race cars and designing paint schemes and the like. So, so we'll have him out there on January 5th.
Awesome. We're going to see you on the 31st?
That I don't know yet.
No?
I still am going to try and make that, and definitely want to make that, and especially since the fact that it sounds like we got some interest from some of the guys that kind of cross over from one sport to the other. So it's on my tentative list of things to definitely do. I might be coming solo. I don't know if my wife's going to join me or not, but all I'm looking for at this point is either to get her to say, yeah, I'm in, and we're both going to go, or nah, you just go by yourself. But I'm okay with that if that's what it ends up being. But I'm trying to convince her to come with me too, so I don't have to be a bachelor. But I'm working hard to coming out New Year's Eve. I really do want to come out and take part in some of the festivities. So I don't know what I'll do if I. You guys are giving away a car, right?
We've got 3 cars actually. 3 cars that are being. There's a Crown Vic, there's a Lumina, and then there's a Dodge Ram pickup truck. Among other things.
I don't know what I'll do if I win one of those. I guess I'll sell them back to one of the other guys that could make better use of them than I could for $50 or something like that, or maybe we could find a good charity to donate the money to. I don't know. We'll do something with it, but if nothing else, hopefully, I hope to at least see you New Year's Eve, and we'll have a good time.
I was thumbing through an issue of Hot Rod in English class the other day because we had to do a class project. We're working on The Outsiders, the book The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.
Oh yeah,
and we had to identify things that were tough, things that were cool. TUFF, not like TOUGH, like tough meat, but tough and cool. And a bunch of the kids were looking at pictures of hot rods and dragsters and stuff. And I was thumbing through a copy of Hot Rod. And I got confused. There was a gentleman's name, and I don't remember it, but he had the fastest Mercury, and it said Mercury Marquis. Now, Mercury Marquis, in my mind, is the same as the LTD or the Crown Victoria that was made in the 70s, and then it's turned into the box-style car in the mid-'80s,
right.
The same as a box-side Lincoln. I've heard of the Mercury Mercure, which was sort of the same, or Mercury Capri, which is in the same sort of vein as those Fox body cars that they'd made with the Mustang II and then turned into the Fox body Mustangs and things like that. But it very plainly said Mercury Marquis in the caption of the photo. And I would love to see you win this Crown Victoria and you take it back home and you put some sort of crazy motor in it and you make the world's fastest 470 Grand Marquis. I think it's a great idea.
It's funny because when I bought my last car, the Grand Marquis was actually on my short list of cars to find, just because of the fact that they're pretty prevalent and that you can find them, let's call it the grandmas of the world that have had these cars for 10 plus years. They have 30,000 miles on them, and they ride great, and they have a trunk the size of a small bedroom on them to haul stuff around with.
Yes.
So it was on my short list of cars. I don't know if I'd be open to taking my race motor out of my drag car and putting it in the Crown Vic and going and smashing it up. But hey, who knows? Anything's possible.
No, you're missing what I'm saying. I'm not saying smash it. I'm saying turn the Mercury, the Crown Vic that we're raffling off. You save it from that death, and it in turn turns into one of the premier 990 cars in Western New York.
Well, I guess we could do that. I forget what the exact term is that they refer to those. So a lot of guys will take their Mustangs and they'll put Chevy motors in their Mustangs, and they have a term that they refer to them by. And I don't want to call them Frankenstein cars, but it's something along those lines, right? Because you put a Chevy power plant into a Ford, and I have to say that'd be the only thing is that if I were to do it, it would have to be a Frankenstein car like that.
That's fine. It's fine.
I just don't know enough about Fords to run one, so it would have to be a Chevy power plant in that.
It's not a problem at all. Those Chevy motors, they drop right in. Ford makes it, Chevy shakes it. No problem at all. Easy.
All right. Well, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. If I happen to win the Crown Vic or the Dodge Ram, then we'll get to that point. But I have to say, at this point, I'd probably be more tempted to say, hey, let's raffle this off again and donate the proceeds to charity.
Yep, that's. There's a lot of people that are just with the sole intention of winning that car so they can sell it that night. They just want to win it so they can sell it. No problem. You're not in a minority there.
But yeah, hopefully hopefully I'll be out there New Year's Eve, and I hope to have an answer for you here in the next day or so. And yeah, like I said, I don't know if I'll be coming to the Bachelor or not, but it'd definitely be fun to go out there and enjoy New Year's Eve with all you guys and kind of talk to some of these guys that really I have zero experience with, other than talking to you about the Derby stuff. Be interested to talk to some of these guys and kind of find out where their head's at.
You're gonna learn a lot in terms of engine combinations, that's for sure. The Crash Course podcast, which airs Monday nights here on Finger Lakes One, hosts the now annual New Year's Eve party in the Chancellor Ballroom at the Waterloo Holiday Inn, right off Route 414. Easy to get to. $260 for a couple's ticket. There are a very, very few tickets left for couples. I think there's maybe 2 couples tickets and 1 single left at this point before the room is completely full. I've already set 2 aside for Jason, so if he lets us know that he's going to be coming by himself, we'll be able to release 1 more couples ticket, barring anything unforeseen. $260 for the couple. That includes your overnight accommodations in the hotel. That also includes 2 passes to the buffet, 2 passes to the 4-hour open bar. It also includes champagne toast at midnight snacks, and Creekside Entertainment going to be serving as the DJ this year. Looking forward to spending a fun night with those guys. And then Smashed Empire Films gives out the year-end awards, basically the equivalent to the Grammys or the Oscars for Demolition Derby, to a bunch of drivers. There's more than a dozen awards being given away in over 5 categories. So looking forward to that. If you have questions, jump online, shop.smashedempire.com. You can find more information there, or look up Crash Course Podcast on Facebook. That's under the events tag. Jason, man, it's always a good time talking to you. I learned a lot. I know the folks at home, they probably learned a lot too. It was another good episode, and we certainly filled it for plans falling apart through the course of the day. I feel like we put a good one in for number 5.
Yeah, I have to say it's amazing how quick the time goes. I guess it's just a testament to how much I like to talk.
Works for me. Filled up the hour. It was another good one. Jason, I appreciate you coming on the show. We're going to wrap it up from here. That's going to do it for us here at FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls. Final Round Podcast, number 5 in the books. We will see you again on January the 5th. That's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Chris. See you.
There goes Jason.